Hello everyone, Christmas is gone, New Year is over, and we're now into 2021. It's a new year. And we've got some stories for you. They're sort of new stories because we've not told them before, but they come from the Bible, so they're very old stories really, but well worth listening to. This first one is called the miraculous oil jar. It comes from 2 Kings chapter 4. Everything had gone wrong for Elijah since his dad had fallen ill. Now, when he thought things couldn't get any worse, when God seemed a million miles away, his mum had told him about the moneylender and about being sold. I don't think I'd want to be sold. Elijah was the oldest of 2 brothers. His dad had named him after Israel's greatest prophet. The name meant, "The Lord is God." Wow, fancy having a name that means something like that. I wonder if you know what your names mean. His dad had believed that the Lord is God. He had been a village prophet. People had paid him to tell them stories about God and to pray on their behalf. Being a prophet's son was great. Sometimes when Elijah Jr., as his dad called him, had walked through the village, someone would run out of their house and thrust a loaf of freshly baked bread in his hands. Imagine it, freshly baked bread, still warm from the oven. And that smell, wow, it'd be fantastic. But then his dad had fallen ill. "Oh, God will do a miracle," everyone said. "He'll cure you, Dad, you'll see." But he didn't. Dad had grown more and more ill. Soon the people weren't so sure. He must have done something wrong," they said among themselves. They'd never said it to Elijah, but he'd noticed the changes. There'd be no more gifts of fresh bread, only an embarrassed silence wherever he went. Then Dad had died. The matter had been quickly decided in the minds of the villagers. It was God's punishment. Prophet had sinned, and he should have known better. The embarrassed silences had been replaced by insults and slammed doors. If God had turned against the prophet's family, the villagers believed that they should too. Now, nobody brought them food. Elijah's mum had borrowed money, planning to find work to pay it back. But no one would hire her. She'd sold their donkey. Then they'd had food for a while. She'd borrowed more money and travelled around all the villages looking for work. But it had been no better. The rumour had spread. The prophet's family is cursed by God. That's what they said. Elijah hadn't known what to think. Were they right? His mum had sold their furniture and their best clothes, but it hadn't been enough to pay the moneylender. At night, Elijah would scour the deserted market streets for scraps of food. Once he found a gold coin. For a short while it had made him believe in his dad's God again. But now the money was spent, and his faith was spent too. The moneylender was due back tomorrow. If Elijah's mum didn't pay the debt, he and his brother would be taken to the market and sold as slaves. Wasn't that awful? Cool, I'd have been a bit worried too. There was just one hope. The great prophet Elisha was visiting the village. He had known Elijah Jr.'s dad. Perhaps he could help. Elijah's mum made the boys wash. It's a bit rough. She washed their only remaining clothes and hung them up to dry. Then they all three gathered together and prayed to God for a miracle. When the clothes were dry, Mum marched the boys to Elisha, who was sitting under a tree, telling a story about God rescuing his people from slavery in Egypt. Elijah was angry. Where was this God when he prayed for his dad to recover? It wasn't fair. When he had finished, Elisha looked up. He recognized Elijah's mum and gave his sympathy to her about her husband. How can I help? He asked. None of them knew what to say. Tell me, he said, what do you have left in your house? All we have, Mum said, is a small amount of oil in a jar. But we've got nothing to cook with it. That is enough, the prophet assured her. Ask your neighbours to give you all their empty jars. Don't ask for a few. Gather as many as you can. Take them to your house and shut the door. Then pour the oil out of your own jar into their jars. Elijah's mum clasped her hand over her mouth in wonder. Aaron ran off towards the village shouting, "What are you waiting for?" He believed it was going to happen, didn't he? But Elijah thought it was a stupid idea. What was the point? Then he looked into the prophet's eyes. Elisha wasn't mocking. He cared. His eyes implored Elijah Jr. to trust God as his dad had done. Elijah turned and he ran, quickly overtaking his mom and his brother. He knocked at the door of the first house he came to. "The prophet has told me to collect the empty jars," he announced. The mention of Elisha did the trick. The door was slammed in Elijah's face, but just before she slammed it, the woman said, "Wait there." He waited. When the woman returned and the door opened a second time, the woman thrust an armful of jars into his direction, then slammed it again. He ran home and gave them to his mum, who started washing them and sent him out to collect some more. At the next house there were so many jars that Elijah borrowed a small handcart so he could take them all home. He kept the cart for the rest of the afternoon. The two brothers pulled it together, gathering jars from everybody. Elijah knocked on doors whilst Aaron filled the cart. Word of the prophet's instructions spread, and the boys sometimes found piles of empty jars waiting for them. Wow! By sunset, they had been to every house in the village and had hundreds of pots and jars. As the light faded, Elijah's mum picked up her own small jar, which contained a little oil. She began to pour the oil into the smallest jar of the whole collection. She continued pouring and filled it to the brim. Elijah carried it carefully across the room and placed it on a shelf. By the time he had picked his way back across the jar-strewn floor, she'd filled a second, and a third, and a fourth. Elijah and Aaron couldn't keep up with the speed that Mum was filling all the jars. They ran out of shelf space, and still she kept pouring. Elijah grabbed the biggest jar of the lot and said, "Try this one." The oil gushed out of Mum's jar, quickly filling the heavy pot. Late into the night, by the light of the moon, the flood of oil continued. They laughed and sang and counted the jars. Elijah saved a beautiful bronze jar until last. As the level of the oil climbed up its polished sides, the flow began to falter. The top of the bronze jar was narrow, and when the oil reached the top, it reached its slender neck, the flow slowed to a dribble. The last drop filled the jar to its shining rim. Early the next morning, the three of them ran to tell Elisha. He wasn't surprised by the news. He knew it was going to happen. Sell it all at the market, he said, and repay the moneylender. You can live on what is left. So that's what they did. They took the jars to the market and sold them. And then they got the money to pay back the moneylender and to buy some more food for themselves. How wonderful is that? They managed to buy some food as well. Wow, isn't that a wonderful story? I know a similar story about feeding some people in Mozambique. Maybe I'll tell you that another time. It's a wonderful story and true, just like that is. It just shows you that even when things look really bad, you've not got enough food, you've not got enough money. And at the moment, there's an awful lot of people who are out of work because of the virus. When things are really bad, if we ask God, He'll show us a way through so that we can cope with what is bad and we can manage to look forward to something that's better. So He gave them the money and the food and everything they needed so the boys didn't have to be sold as slaves. How wonderful is that? What a magnificent God we've got. I hope you like the story. I'm not sure what Steve's doing for you today. I think it's some kind of noisy quiz. Let's see. See you next week. Bye.
Hi boys and girls, it's Steve here. Another great story from Mandy. Welcome to a brand new year, everybody. Hope you had a fantastic Christmas. Well, the nativity scene has all been packed away, ready for next year, and we're going to do something a bit different today. We've played this game before, but we got some new ideas to put to it this morning. I want you to let your imaginations just run riot, and I want you to pretend to be lots of different things. When I tell you what I want you to become, I want you to make the noises and to do the actions that those things or those animals or whatever might be. In other words, pretend to actually be the thing that I suggest you turn into. So I'm going to suggest, first of all, that you become a monkey. Number one is a monkey. Come on, boys and girls, those of you that are watching and listening, pretend to be a monkey. How does a monkey go? What kind of noises does it make? Does it climb? Does it run? How does it behave? See if you can be a monkey and see if your mum or dad or your brothers or your sisters or your dog or your budgie or your cat can guess what you're pretending to be. Well, that's pretty good. I can see from here. That's amazing. Well done, everybody. Fantastic. Okay, you can stop being monkeys now because this time I want you, secondly, to pretend to be an ambulance. You're an ambulance coming to rescue somebody who is ill. You're rushing through the red traffic lights and everybody waits for you because you're in a hurry. Off you go. Be an ambulance. Make the noise. Drive around like an ambulance does. Be an ambulance man that jumps out and helps the sick person lying in the road. Off you go. Hey, well, there's some buddy ambulance men and women here, I can see. Excellent stuff. Number three, so you can stop being an ambulance now. And for number three, I want you to pretend to become a Formula One racing car. I love watching Formula One racing on the television. Can you become like one of those fast racing cars that zoom round the circuit at up to 200 miles an hour? Can you do that? Off you go, zoom around the room and make the noise that a racing car makes. I'm going to have a sip of coffee while you do that. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Well done indeed. Okay, you can stop being racing cars, and now I want you to be another animal. I want you to become a horse. What does a horse do? You could trot, or you could clip, clop, or you could be pulling a cart, or you could be racing, galloping, cantering across the fields. You could neigh or whinny. That's a difficult noise to make. Or you could snort like a horse snorts. You might have a rider on your back. What would you do if you were pretending to be a horse? Have a go. Go on. Hey, way. Fantastic horses there. Brilliant. Best horses I've ever seen. Now I want you to stop being a horse. This time become a lion, roaring and growling and snarling and flexing your claws, stalking your prey. Are you ready? Be a lion. Off you go. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. They are some of the best lions I have ever seen. In fact, if I didn't know better, I actually would have thought that some of your mum and dads had a real lion in their house. Now I want to stop you being I want you to stop being a lion, and I want you to become something a bit slower. A snail. They go so slowly. How will you be a snail? I don't think they make any noise. I've certainly not heard a snail make a noise. But how do they move? Sometimes they can climb up walls, can't they? Or fences, or your gate, or up poles and posts, slide across the ground in the garden, up the plants. I don't think you'd better try and climb up the wall. Just keep to the floor. Wow, they're great snails, but I think it's going to take you a very long time to get anywhere, because it does take snails a long time to get anywhere. This time, number 7, I want you to be a school teacher. What's your school teacher like? How does he or she speak? What does she do? Does she use the blackboard? Does she have a whiteboard? Does she have a projector? How does she do her lessons? Does she walk up and down the classroom? Does she peer over your desk and your table and look at your work? Does she mark the homework? Does she say, "Good morning, boys and girls. Good morning, class"? How does it go? Pretend to be your teacher. Ha ha! There's some good teachers there. Maybe one or two of you will become a school teacher later on when you grow up. That's an excellent job to have. We need teachers badly. For number 8, stop being a school teacher now, and now I want you to be a railway train, a railway engine, a train. How do trains go? Do you remember that sound they make? Old steam trains, they used to go, but you don't see many of them around many nowadays. They're all electric or diesel, aren't they? Do you remember that? As they fly through the station. What kind of train are you going to be? Good trains there, some very fast trains there as well, like the bullet train in Japan. So quick. Number 9, I want you now to stop being a train, and I want you to be a seagull. A seagull. You know those birds down by the beach? Sometimes they land in your garden or perch on your roof, and they make all those squawking sounds, and they circle up in the sky. And if you're not careful, they steal your ice cream off you on a sunny day, because they're always so hungry, it seems. And then sometimes they bob up and down on the waves on the water. You're a seagull. Off you go. Be the best seagull there can possibly be in the whole of St Anne's on Sea. Oh, there are some noisy seagulls there, I can tell you. Well, you just got one more thing to pretend to be this morning, and next week we'll play a different game. But today, to finish off with, I want you to pretend to be a jet plane, an aeroplane flying fast in the sky. You could be taking off, or you could be landing, or you could be circling the airport. You could be traveling high up in the sky. What's your aeroplane going to be like? There's some good aeroplanes there. I see another one there. Oh, and one over there too. Great, great, brilliant aeroplanes. Well done, everybody. Well, thank you so much, boys and girls, for playing my game this morning. I'll be back next Sunday after another of Mandy's wonderful stories to lead you in another game, or possibly even a quiz next week. But this is Steve saying bye for now.